Guys, you know how bad the Cowboys defense was last season. Not just bad, but honestly, like historically bad. But look, things are shifting now, and I genuinely believe this defense is back on track. They brought in Christian Parker as the defensive coordinator. They signed and drafted a whole bunch of defensive pieces. And when you look at this roster right now, it already looks like a completely different unit. Now, everyone's got their role. Everyone contributes. I get that. But there is one man, one specific guy who I believe is the true X factor for this Cowboys defense. And I'm not just throwing that word around. By the time this video is done, you're going to understand exactly why I feel that way. One thing I can tell you right now, we are going to see a drastic improvement in this defense, and it starts with him. What's up, Cowboys? Welcome to the NFL Playbook. Cowboys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So guys, my X factor is Malachi Lawrence, and honestly, I feel like he hasn't gotten nearly enough attention since the draft. Like, everybody's keep talking about Caleb Downs, but Malachi Lawrence? I don't think people are truly appreciating what this guy could mean for Dallas. So let me break this down because I've been thinking about this a lot. First things first. What do you actually need from Malachi Lawrence coming into year one? I mean, you're not asking him to be the #1 guy. You're not asking him to lead the league in sacks or be the face of this pass rush. What you need from him is to be a major contributor to a whole pass rush unit. You need him to be part of a group of guys that collectively make life miserable for opposing quarterbacks. And you know what? I genuinely think that's completely within his reach when you watch what this guy can do. Now, here's the thing about Lawrence that gets me so fired up. He is bursty. I mean, really, truly bursty in a way that just doesn't come around that often. We're talking about a 1-5-9 split. He's got some hand technique in his bag, limited but still there, and he's going into a situation where he's playing from that wide 9 technique. And that matters a lot because that alignment is going to let him do exactly what he does best. His speed to power stuff gets accentuated, you know? The things that maybe he struggles with a little bit, like quickly turning the corner in tighter alignments, those become way less of an issue out there on the edge. So, the Cowboys are already setting him up to succeed right out of the gate. And look, I think the reason the Cowboys really fell in love with Malachi Lawrence is because of what his ceiling looks like. Like, compare him to Donovan Ezeiruaku for a second. Ezeiruaku is a good athlete. He's bendy, but he's not a supreme athlete. The way Ezeiruaku won in college was through really solid technique and understanding exactly what his strengths and weaknesses were. Malachi Lawrence is a completely different story. This guy has been winning almost entirely on athleticism and pure God-given traits. He hasn't even scratched the surface of what he can become as a technical pass rusher yet. You get him in an NFL facility with better coaching, where every single day he can just focus on his craft. The growth could be exponential. Now, does that happen in year one? Honestly, I don't know. But here's why I'm still really high on him even now. There are pass rushers in this league who have a low win rate, maybe only 2 or 3 moves in their bag, but they rack up 8 or 9 sacks anyway. Why? Because when your athleticism and explosiveness are at a certain level, you just find yourself in favorable situations constantly. You're chasing quarterbacks around the backfield. You're cleaning up sacks that your teammates created. I think Malachi Lawrence is going to be exactly that kind of guy early in his career. The comp that actually comes to mind for me is Ezekiel Ansah coming out of BYU, still learning how to rush the passer as a rookie, still raw technically. But he put up something like 8 sacks because he was just so athletically freakish that he kept ending up in the right place at the right time. But here's the part that really gets me. This guy has been winning at every level of football with a technical flaw that's been holding him back the whole time. He's been taking a false step in his get-off, literally taking an extra step when he comes off the line that he doesn't need. So even though he's been beating people with athleticism this whole time, he's actually been sapping his own explosiveness by doing this. They're apparently working on it right now, putting some kind of weight on his foot so he stops lifting it artificially at the snap. And when they fix that, when is that false step gone? We haven't even seen the real Malachi Lawrence yet. That's what's crazy to me. So realistically, I think 5 or 6 sacks in year one is a very solid and very achievable target. And honestly, beyond the sack numbers, his biggest contribution early on might be the stress he puts on tackles just by being out wide in that alignment. When you've got someone as explosive as Malachi Lawrence lined up that far outside, tackles have to respect that speed. They have to kick out wide. And when they do that, it opens up everything underneath for your interior rushers, for your stunts, for your blitzers. So even on plays where Malachi Lawrence doesn't finish, he's creating for everybody else. That's the real value. Okay, now let's talk about Donovan Ezeiruaku for a minute, because I think these two guys are going to be paired together for the next several years. Ezeiruaku had a really weird rookie season. Going in, the knock was whether he could hold up against the run at 246 pounds. And somehow, he ended up being way better against the run in the second half of the year than anyone expected. The pass rushing numbers went up and down, and then he went into the offseason dealing with a hip injury. So, heading into year 2, there's a real question about what we're going to get from him. The thing is that I think a lot of what we saw drop off late in the season was just a rookie who hit a wall physically. He was playing a ridiculous number of snaps, 40 against Green Bay, 46 against the Jets. He was basically a starter from week 1 because of circumstances out of his control. And then you throw in a stretch where they're playing like 4 games in 18 days? That catches up with you. It would catch up with anybody. In year 2, that changes completely. With Rashan Gary, with Malachi Lawrence, with Sam Williams, and James Houston in this room, the workload gets distributed so much better. He can operate the way a pass rusher his size should, getting into games fresh and attacking. And honestly, the fact that he became an above-average run defender in the second half of last year despite everything, that's huge. If you can be above average against the run and above average pass rusher, which I truly believe he can get to, now you're talking about a top 12, top 15 player in the league. Those guys are genuinely rare. The comparisons that keep coming up for me are Nolan Smith with the Eagles and Nick Benito with the Broncos. Ezeiruaku is somewhere between those two guys as a player. And he's actually 9 pounds heavier than what Nick Benito was coming out of college, so size concerns in this scheme, not a real issue. So, when I look at this pass rush room as a whole, right? You've got Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark up front creating interior chaos. You've got Rashan Gary pushing tackles back into the quarterback. And then you've got Malachi Lawrence and Donovan Ezeiruaku bringing that burst off the edges. That is a formidable group. And the idea that Brian Shottenheimer keeps talking about, that it's a lot harder to block a unit of pass rushers than just one guy, that's completely true. When you've got multiple threats coming from different spots, it changes everything for an offensive line. Now look, is there something this group is still missing? I think they could probably use another bigger body edge like a 265-pound type guy who can play that 7 technique on the strong side hold up as a run defender. Maybe shift inside when they go to a 5 or 6-man surface. Kind of a glass eater. The guy who just fights your left tackle all game, keeping blockers occupied. Those guys are hard to find but really valuable. Maybe LT Overton ends up being that guy. Maybe they bring in a veteran as camp gets closer. I think that's something to watch going forward. I also think it's worth mentioning guys like Maris Lufo and Jyshawn Barham in this conversation because they add another dimension to what this defense can do schematically. Barham specifically, he's got the explosiveness and the instincts to threaten a quarterback from a couple of different angles, whether that's walking down to the edge or coming up the middle in a sim pressure. Even 4 or 5 snaps a game from a guy like that adds up over a full season. And when you combine all these moving pieces together, it just makes the whole unit that much harder to game plan against. But at the end of the day, I keep coming back to Malachi Lawrence. Because when I think about what this defense needs most, what's going to make the biggest difference between last year's version and this year's version, it's having that X factor off the edge who can change a game with one play. And I genuinely believe that's what Malachi Lawrence can be. Even before the development fully kicks in, even before the technique fully catches up with the athleticism, just on pure explosion and burst alone, this guy can be a serious problem for offensive tackles across this league. And when you add in everything else this defense has built around him, with Christian Parker running the whole operation, man, I'm telling you, we are going to see a completely different Cowboys defense this season, and I cannot wait.